Lequier, and we are going to be talking about the cost of communication and how that relates to team retention. I know there were a few other people that were joining tonight, so we'll wait here a few minutes just to see if they come on. I'm happy to be with you today and continue in our series. We are on the 5th series, and I want to thank Equa Marketing for sponsoring this series. They are the leaders in digital marketing, so I appreciate their sponsorship. I also wanted to let you know that next month I will be on, instead of the 4th Thursday, or the 3rd Thursday, I will be on the 4th Thursday because I will be in Dentistry's Got Talent. It is down in Florida. I will be with 50 other people competing in a speaking event. So join me there as well in October. But we are continuing on with our series, and today, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about team retention. Now, when I think about team retention, a lot comes to mind. So we're going to move forward with the objectives for today, and that's to discuss why employees leave. Also, discover solutions to reduce a negative impact on when an employee leaves. Because if we're talking about a dental office, and you could be talking about any profession or any office, when we're talking about a dental office, not only is the team impacted, but the patients are impacted when they see new faces. And we're going to also talk about self-assessment of your leadership style and the SOA. So why should we care? What's the purpose of that? So to start it off, why do employees leave? Now, there's a few things that we can't change. So if a employee leaves because they're moving or they're changing careers, that's just the way it goes. Sometimes a change in life circumstance, for example, having a baby, caring for an elderly parent. Hey, you know what? What about if you won the lottery? Yeah, won the lottery, not coming back. Those are change in life circumstances. Also, they may leave for things that they maybe can or can't control depending upon what's going on. So for example, they feel like they don't fit in, or they're not aligned with the practice philosophy, they don't like changes. So I worked with an office one time where I was working as their consultant, and the doctor believed in fluoride, and he had a hygienist who didn't believe in fluoride, and he had wanted her to promote fluoride, and she wasn't promoting fluoride. So that's where practice philosophy, it comes to a misalignment, a miscommunication, and it can cause some tension in the practice. So that's something why people leave, or maybe why they would be terminated for a position as well if the practice philosophies don't line up. And also, people don't like changes sometimes. So when there's a lot of changes going on, that may be a factor. Patterns of behavior, meaning if you're a lifelong job seeker, there's people out there, if you look at their resume, they're every 6 months, year, they're finding that new job. So some people, it's what they do. They are job seekers, and they're trying to find that true purpose and haven't found it yet. So that's why employment leave, is that they are just finding that they need to go to that next level, whatever that is for them. I hear this a lot, and I see this a lot in those Facebook groups. If any of you are part of a Facebook group, they talk about they don't feel valued, they're underpaid, haven't had a raise in 10 years. This is very common. And what I found, as you guys know and have listened to my series over the past 5 months, is, I've practicing hygienist, and over the past 6 years, I've been a consultant, and I've seen both sides. I've been on the side of the employee and the side of the consultant working with the employees and employers. And they're considering a pay increase that can be conflict in the mind of the employer. So they don't feel valued, they feel underpaid, and a lot of times the doctor doesn't know how to have that conversation with them. And they're looking at numbers in a different way than the employees are. So that can be a big tension there. Job is either hard or not challenging enough. If a person's coming on and they're a new employee and they're not given any direction, then that could feel like it's too hard, or they don't have any systems in place, they feel lost, or it could be something that they didn't know they were getting into, or it might not be challenging enough. They thought that it was going to be more challenging than it is, so they want something different and something more. Another reason is they're just not feeling fulfilled. There's no purpose. They're going through the motions. Now, again, this may have to do with the job or the culture and the environment of the position itself, or it might have more to do with their personal life. I know I've gone through this in my own personal journey of, what am I doing here? What is my purpose in this? And, we can kind of get caught up in that too. And just remembering that where you are in that moment, you have a purpose, even if you don't feel it in the moment. You're there to serve your patients, and your patients are there to, really help you along the way and help you see why you're there. And I'm talking about if you're working in op. If you're outside the op, there's other concerns, other things. We do want to practice being grateful, because that does really help the mindset in that positive attitude. Also, employees may leave because they don't understand what's expected of them. They were never given an opportunity to be trained properly, and we all know this in the dental office. And again, I can speak to this because I've experienced it myself, and I've experienced it with my the offices that I've worked with. Is the training program is more or less, okay, you're hired, you're an assistant, you're a hygienist, go for it. Here you go. This is what time you start. This is what time you end. Here's your room. Go at it. And some people are okay with that. They can wing it to a certain level, and others really need to be prepared. That might not be for them if they don't know what's expected of them. Also, might feel micromanaged. Perspective is people's reality. So when you have a perspective of feeling micromanaged, whether that's true or not, if that's how you feel, that's what you're going to portray out. So if a manager is trying to give you direction and it's coming across as micromanaging, they might not be intentionally doing that. So that's why this is called cost of communication, because all of these things cost us. And when we have team retention, when patients see that the team is there and they're enjoying their job and our team stays, that is a beautiful thing. When there's constantly a revolving door, it can be very stressful on everybody, and it costs money, it costs emotional baggage, it costs mental health, physical health. And to have that feeling of being micromanaged, it can feel very stressful and like you're not good enough. Another way that employees leave is they get an offer at a competitor. Maybe it's a great opportunity. Maybe you're a small private dental practice and you don't offer insurance, which is common. And they are going to a corporate that offers that. I mean, if that person's stage in life, that might be what they need, and that might be okay. However, we have to remember as the employee that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. There are reasons why corporate can offer insurance, and there's reasons why smaller offices cannot. Certain expenses that are just not realistic for certain offices. However, there's pros and cons to both, and so whatever season you're in your life, whatever you need for your family, that's what you need to think about. But just remember that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And then another reason why employees leave is they get laid off or let go by the employer. So all of the 1 through 10 have to do with the employee, and 11 is the employer is saying, this isn't the right fit. And I've worked with offices that, this is something that maybe they should have realized sooner. So an employee stayed on when it wasn't the right fit. And to be honest with you, when we are in a position where we stay too long, it really is not an advantage just to say, okay, well, I don't want to find another person, because it's stressful trying to find an employee. Well, having a warm body here, even though they're not the right fit, is better than nothing. Well, not necessarily. That can be detrimental to the entire team because it become a toxic environment. So what is that question behind the question? What is the why? Why is that person wanting to leave in the first place? What is going on in their head that's saying, okay, what is going on here that I just can't stand being here anymore? I read a white paper back about these are some of the stats that I learned while I was going through that research. And it was the cost of losing an employee, depending upon which study you read, but the cost of losing an employee ranges from anywhere from $15,000 to over $100,000. Now, this was all businesses. This didn't have to do with just dental specific. It was all businesses. But if you think about it, that is a lot of money when we are talking about training, when we're talking about, let's say, for instance, you have a hygienist who's paid $65,000 per year. The cost to replace him or her, 33%. So if we're going at that second bullet point here, we use data from the Employee Benefit News Report. 33% of employees' annual salary is the estimated cost. So $65,000 paid hygienist, 33%. That is $21,450. I'm looking down because I did the math to make sure I had it right. Percentages doing in my head not so fast. So that cost adds up with the employee changes each year. So that is a pretty significant cost when you are trying to make ends meet and you're trying to reduce your overhead. And in 2017, the Work Institute Retention Report concluded that 74% of the respondents reported the turnover could have been prevented. So to me, that is where the cost of communication really comes in. Now, in our previous episodes, the first one, we talked about the cost of communication as it relates to your vision. So if your team doesn't know where you're going, they don't know where you're headed, they're not sure how to follow you, okay? So they need some guidance and a compass to know where they're going. And then we talked about unrealistic expectations. We talked about how having a particular feedback and having performance evaluation, knowing where we stand in the office is really an important thing. We also talked about the hygiene department and the influencing nature of the hygiene department in and of itself. I mean, as employees are coming in, they're building relationships with other employees, and more so, hello there, and more so with the patients. And so what we want to make sure is that we are understanding what that cost of losing an employee is. So what are some solutions? Well, as I mentioned in my first episode, creating that vision so your team knows where you're headed. What are they in for? Do they align with your practice philosophy? Do they know what growth you're looking for? Are they on board? Because, up until I was probably 12 years working as a hygienist, I didn't know what value I brought to the office as far as monetary value in building the practice. I knew I was there as a relationship type person and I was doing my job, but as how I contribute to the bottom line to grow that business, I didn't really know until I was told, here's what you produce, how many fluorides you do, and really get that big picture. So if you're not used to hearing numbers and things like that, it can be a little bit over one, and it can be a little off-putting because people think, okay, well, all they care about is the production and the numbers. Well, how do we grow unless we understand the bigger picture? So I don't need to know every single number that the doctor needs to worry about, but from a hygiene standpoint, from an assistant, from a front office, I feel value in understanding how I contribute and as a team, how we're going to grow together, because ultimately it benefits the whole team. So knowing the vision, knowing the growth, knowing the practice philosophy, that's one way. And then having a documented hiring and training process in place, and I've talked about this in my previous episodes as well, is that if we want team retention, they need to be successful in their position. So we want them to have success. And dental offices are notorious for not having training programs. It's just known, right? And we go in, we start the day as a new employee, and if you say you're an assistant or hygienist, you're just say, okay, here for it, as I mentioned earlier. And so having those specific training programs in place really helps with the solution of the team retention. And then when employees leave, don't panic. And hire the first person that comes. This has happened a lot. There's been people that I know that this has happened to because they feel like, oh my gosh, they're gone. I got to hire someone really quick. And that's where that turnover comes into place, because we are just hiring the first person that comes through, and that may not be the best fit for your practice. I would also suggest, when possible, have your team interview the potential candidate as well, so that you get a feel for the entire practice, especially if they're going to be patient facing. I mean, if it's someone who's going to be, if you have an office that's big enough where you have an insurance coordinator that is in an office by themselves all day long, I mean, we need to know that the person is an introverted person and that position is going to fit for them. And some person is an extrovert, that's not going to necessarily be the best fit of putting them in a room by themselves, Or if you have 3 extroverts at the front desk together and we're trying to get work done, sometimes that's not the best fit. So understanding the team, who you want to get into your practice to help with your growth, and understanding those things. And you can learn different personality science, MBTI, the DISC, do those types of things to help you with that. And then another solution is intentional communication and ongoing feedback. I'm a big proponent on understanding what response I want to have before I say it. And you can't always do that, but having intentional communication, what I mean by that is the word silent, if you switch the words around, also means listen. So sometimes we need to listen, sometimes we need to be silent, and sometimes we need to speak. So understanding that when we communicate with people, to have intention and purpose behind it so we get a specific result is really going to be long-lasting and relationship building. And then ongoing feedback so that we know where we stand in practice. So it shouldn't be once a performance evaluation or once every 2 years or when the doctor feels like it or when the office manager feels like it or when an employee asks for it. There should be a process protocol in place. In some offices, it's an open door policy. If my door is open, you're allowed to come in. It's a busy dental office, so there should be specific times. Not down the hallway and saying, "Oh, hey, I need to talk to you." I mean, that's never really a good choice unless it's emergency and it has something that just syncopate or something. Then you grab them. But if it's a communication thing or trying to get feedback, unless it's urgent. A needle stick just happened, one of those safety OSHA things, then we want to do it at a time that is realistic for the entire team. Maybe it's setting aside a time of 15 minutes. Maybe it's a phone call later, depending upon what it is. But having that ongoing feedback and having maturity, understanding that this is not a blame game. It's not something that we're trying to micromanage. It's so we can grow the exposed as well. So we have those blind spots that we aren't necessarily aware of. So if we can help each other, then that's going to benefit the whole team. And then staying current with advanced technology, professional skills, and clinical advancement. As I mentioned in the earlier slide, employees leave because they don't feel purpose. They also get bored. They don't feel challenged enough. So allowing, if a hygienist, if you can do laser, for instance, or sleep, a lot of sleep studies going on now, informed in how the airway interacts with sleeping and ADHD and all of those new things. Well, they're not new things, but things new to the dental profession. It's great. That here I'll help you with paying for that class, or help us to see how that would benefit us as a team. Being able to have those technologies and advancements and honing in on those professional skills really helps you and helps the patients understand that you are up and coming. And if you want to make profit, you don't want to be the dentist on the street. We want to feel like, depends on what your vision is. Maybe that is your vision and you want to be that one. Or if you want to grow and you want to have more of a, what's the word I'm thinking of, like concierge type of boutique practice, then you want to make sure that those match. So your vision and what you're doing match. And then your team will come along and buy into that, or they won't, they'll leave. So one way to assess how we're doing is what I call gap analysis. Well, no, I don't just call it that. I mean, that's what it's called in the business setting. But here's an example of a self-assessment, or what's called a gap analysis. So here's 5 questions that, on a scale of 1 to 8 or 1 to 10, I can only fit 8 on this slide. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 to 8, whatever that looks like, 1 to 5, how comfortable are you with change? So you would, as a leader, if you're the doctor, you would answer these questions, and you would have your team answer the questions and about you. So you're uncomfortable with change, and you say a 4. And then the team would say, doctor is comfortable with change, and they'd say a 1. Well, if you think you're a 4 and they think you're a 1, then there's a gap of 3. So then we reevaluate. Nobody puts their names on it or anything. You just know that, okay, let's be mature adults here and try to have this conversation of what that looks like. And so when you do a self-assessment and you compare it to your team, then you can say what's going on. Now, what I found over the years of doing this, because I do this when I go in as a consultant, I do this to assess oneself to be able to help consult better. Like, what is the team's perspective of what the doctor or office manager or multiple doctors are? And so if there's 3 doctors in practice, the team does 1 for each doctor. Even if they're not the own doctor, if they're an associate or part-time, it's still important because the doctors, by default, become a leader in the practice. So we have this gap analysis, and then we compare it and we say, okay, how can we help each other? What are we doing? Give examples, and sometimes it might be resources, sometimes it might be a training, it might be reaching out to a colleague and saying, hey, you know what, I'm struggling in this area. So self-awareness is how we grow. If we're not sure and we're not aware, we don't have the choice to change. So being able to have that choice to change because we become aware of it is a positive thing. It doesn't mean we're weak, it's not negative or a failure. It's identifying how we can grow and then taking action on that. All right, so what's next? So then after that, we have questions to ask potential employees. So on LinkedIn recently, there was a couple of different people that were saying, what questions do you hate when you're at the interview? And people were putting different things in there, and they hate, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, stuff like that. Well, here's something that you could ask as an employee to the doctor, or if you're the doctor or the office manager, whoever's doing the hiring, could ask a potential employee. So it could go both ways. So asking, what does success mean to you? What does that mean? And I ask this question as a consultant. I'll say to the doctor, I'm like, okay, so I ask them what their barriers are. I ask them their 3 goals. And I narrow it down to 3, no more than that, just 3 goals. And they sometimes have 1. Usually they have 3 or more. But I always ask them, what does success mean to you? Because it's important for me to have that perspective of what they think. Just like if you are in a dental office and you do a smile assessment, and the patient, you give them a smile assessment, you said, would you like whiter teeth? Say no. Well, are you going to spend 30 minutes talking about whitening with someone who doesn't care about whitening their teeth? I hope not, because it's a waste of time, right? They already self-identified they don't care if their teeth are white. As you get going with them, they could change their mind, of course. We're talking about veneers and things like that. But essentially, that's not where you're going to start, because that's not how they identify themselves. So not understanding what success means to that particular person. And then what does successful communication look or sound like? And then when you ask people this question, and you could even ask your mom or dad, or you could ask your best friend, ask these questions, see what they say, because it's very interesting. Human behavior to me is just very interesting, and what people think, because sometimes they respond in how they want you to think. Like, what does this person, what's their angle? What are they trying to get at? And they try to respond in a way of what they think you want to hear. So honesty is always the best. If you don't have the answer, say, I'm not really sure. I haven't thought about that before. Let me come back to you. But what does successful communication look or sound like? what does successful implementation of a system look and feel like? So we talk a lot about meetings. We talk a lot about, you know, and again, this subject's on team retention, so a big encompassing topic of what we're going to do, and it's building a foundation. So if we build this foundation, we are in a interview with someone, and we're asking these questions, we're already setting the bar really high. Like this person's saying, wow, I've never been asked these questions before. And they know this is going to be right for me, or maybe this is the right fit for me. And then how do you or we know when we've reached success? So what does success look like? And I ask my clients this all the time, you know, how do you know when you've reached it? You know, my son is 20 years old, and he's at this level of just, you know, being a realtor, and he just wants success, success, success. And I'm like, okay, what does that look like? You know, how do you know you've reached it? And he doesn't really have an answer. I mean, he's just like, you know, sell more houses, sell more houses. You know, at 20 years old, that's awesome. And I wish we could all be as motivated as him. But it's one of those things where if we haven't really thought about it, it's our initial answer might not be exactly what we want. So we might want to ponder a little bit and think, okay, you know, how else could we define success? And maybe it's a team meeting. We talk about it and we say, okay, hey, here's what success looks like. So my challenge, let's see here. Where'd it go? My challenge is for people to go and ask, you know, what is our training process? So if you're a doctor, you know, ask your team, you know, what's our training process? If you're a team member, asking each other, you know, what happens when someone comes in? Are we really embracing a new employee? Some people, I mean, a new employee hasn't been there in 15 years. What happens, or what if a temp comes in? You know, what if someone goes on vacation and a temp comes in? What's that embrace of that temp? Do they know what there is expected of them when they come in? So what is our training process? If you don't have one, start with 3 things. One is the 1 week, 30, 60, 90 day feedback form, which for new employees, I always suggest after 1 week to check in, 30 days, 60 days and 90 days. And then that's sort of the initial setting the standard. You know, what do you need from me? How can I help you be more successful? Here's some feedback I found. Here's some feedback from the team. And depending upon what it is, and having a specific training protocol, like here's what's expected of you in the first week, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So they have a checklist. And then provide a new employee with a checklist, which I was talking about, of what they're expected to do and learn, so that they know when they've reached success. I know when I get through this checklist, if I know it, whoops, hold on, then I know that I have reached it. And then the other one is assign an employee who is the trainer, and then taking the self-assessment and comparing it to the team. So whatever self-assessment that is, I can always send one. You can always email me, and I can send you the ones I have, or you can Google it, you know, self-assessment. You can go create your own, and that's fine too. But having some sort of questions, and you can Google gap analysis and, you know, see what you come up with as well. But team retention is a subject that is it's really hard to narrow it down to one thing. So as I mentioned earlier, there's some solutions that I mentioned: having a vision, making sure that you're communicating with your team, giving feedback, growing your technology, your professional growth, and then being that office that people talk about and saying, wow, if there's ever an opening there, then that's where I want to work. I work with a client in Florida, and I was with them a couple weeks ago doing a day training, and they said that, you know, they're the office, and it's a small office, 1 doctor office. They just had to an assistant hire because the positions changed in the practice. Somebody retired and to front, and then they had an assistant. So in the community, apparently there was people who were talking about what a great office it was, and you know, they would be lucky to have that position there. So being known in the community for that type of practice is key. And team retention, it can be a struggle. Again, don't hire the first person that walks through the door, and give your team a place where they would want to work. You know, what does it feel like here? What does it look like? Do an assessment of the practice. If I was working for me, if you're the doctor, if I was working for me, would I want to work here? Ask yourself that. It's a hard question. And then team members, ask yourself, why am I here? What's my purpose? What am I trying to fulfill? You know, what greater purpose do I have here? And really helping each other in being a team player. And again, if you haven't watched my other series, I talk about being a team player, talk about unrealistic expectations, all of these things that are wrapped into this team building and team retention topic. So next month, like I mentioned, it's going to be October 25th. That's going to be still a Thursday, but it's the fourth Thursday of the month because I am, as I mentioned, going to be doing a speaking event where I am in Dentistry's Got Talent going against 50 other people and trying to win a prize. So that will be exciting in Florida. And so next time we'll continue the series of cost communication. And I also want to thank Equita Marketing for the sponsorship. Thank you for joining me. Naomi and Jamie was on earlier, and I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to spend it here with me. My email is amy@bridgetgapcs.com. My website, my phone number, it's right here on the screen, 802-922-8486, and www.bridgethegapconsultingservices.com. You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, not so much on Instagram, don't do too much on there, but also my Facebook page, personal page, and my business page.